Hey everyone, welcome to our latest webinar at Diversio, How HR Leaders Are Rethinking Culture. We have been having a ton of conversations with our clients, with our contacts, our partners, to understand how are they thinking about optimizing their performance, given all of the multitude of headwinds and tailwinds that are facing HR leaders. So everything from the global economy and the uncertainty that's presenting itself there, tariffs, maybe no tariffs, kind of, the macroeconomic trends that are affecting business more broadly and affecting how people hire and retain talent, all the way down to the micro concerns and questions around work from home and return to office, flexibility, the hangover effects of COVID, we would call it. So really good time, I think, to sit back and say, what are the leading trends that are affecting talent? And how can HR leaders rethink how they drive particularly what we hear as a key trend, retention of top talent and minimizing burnout risk? And so what we're going to do today is walk through some of those major trends. So again, what is affecting the talent landscape? And then very exciting, we're going to give you a sneak peek into a brand new product that we're launching at the end of this summer called Optimo. And so we're delighted and I think lucky to have our product manager, Sam, on the line, who knows the product better than anyone, to walk us through a demo. And of course, as always, Q&A, please put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A bucket, and we will make sure that there's plenty of time to go through them. Okay, fabulous. Okay, today's webinar, 4 or 5 main topics. So number 1, why the culture playbook is broken. And so again, we have 7 years of data, 7 years of experience working with customers and companies around the world to understand how they're thinking about retaining and developing top talent. And a lot of learnings around what works and frankly, what doesn't. So we're going to share some of that. Number 2, what actually drives retention? And again, a lot of the conventional wisdom in this space we're seeing in the data is not true anymore, and maybe wasn't true at all. And so beyond perks, beyond compensation, what truly does retain talent? We'll go through some of those key drivers. Number 3, again, conventional wisdom is that engagement scores are the number 1 way to measure how productive, how motivated, how happy employees are. We're going to look at a few things that we think are actually more powerful insights beyond engagement scores to help you understand how your team is feeling and where they are in their development journey. Finally, introducing the performance culture framework. We believe at Diversio that looking at employee engagement and culture separately from learning and development loses a lot of the nuance and a lot of the power of bringing those 2 things together. So we're going to introduce a new way of thinking about the whole employee experience, the whole employee journey in a way that more closely reflects and mimics the employee's actual experience at the company. And then most exciting, at least for me, is we'll finish with the demo of Optimo. And again, this is the first public demonstration of this new platform. And so we're super excited for your feedback, any reactions, any ideas. Now it's a good time to send them in. Okay, with that in mind, I'm Laura McGee. I'm the founder and CEO of Diversio. I live between New York and Toronto. Today, I'm dialing in from Toronto. Delighted to be here. And I'm also joined by my co-host, Daniel Fellows. Daniel, do you want to give a quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I'm Daniel Fellows, the General Manager of the UK and Europe, growing our expansion in this region. I was founder and CEO of a technology company, Get Optimal, until last year, and I've had the pleasure of working in some pretty awesome companies, not as awesome as Diversio, Laura, I hasten to add.
Fabulous. And then, as I mentioned, we are also joined by our product manager. Sam, do you want to give a quick intro as well?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm off mute there. Hi there. My name is Sam Bonin. My pronouns are he, him. I am the product manager here at Diversio. And in a former life, I was a national team athlete in the sailing sport for Team Canada.
Awesome. And we'll hear much more from Sam in a moment. So let's start off with topic number 1. So again, 7 years of data. We've worked with over 1,200 companies around the world across 35 countries. What we've seen is that there's a lot of similarities in how companies approach culture, and a lot of the same mistakes are made over and over. And in this new reality where AI is becoming an overwhelming factor in business where, employees and companies are still trying to figure out that hybrid work model, and where there's more economic uncertainty than ever, we need to rethink how culture is operated, managed, and scaled across companies. And so what we're seeing, for example, is that company values, so what people put on their website, what gets presented at town halls, what the CEO typically really believes in, is often not actually reflected and felt in employees' day-to-day experience. Second learning for us is that culture fit, that, airport test, who do I want to spend 10 hours, delayed on the tarmac with, does tend to really exclude diverse talent. So if somebody doesn't feel like someone that you could easily work with, and that is your filter on who you bring onto your team, what you end up losing is people with different experiences, different perspectives, who aren't as comfortable, but add a lot of value to whatever job you're doing, whether it's opening new markets from a sales perspective, coming up with new ideas from a product perspective, better engaging with customers from a CS perspective. And then thirdly, related to retention, as I mentioned earlier, the approaches that companies are taking to retaining talent aren't typically or often related to what actually motivates their employees. And so what we see typically two approaches to retention. Either we give the person we think is at risk of leaving a raise, which is a one-time bump, limited utility and limited value, and also, of course, leaves you at risk to a competing offer. And or companies will roll out perks. Maybe it's, free candy in the break room, maybe it's foosball tables, maybe it's additional work from home opportunities. And those perks don't match what's important to the employees, or don't match what's important to everybody. And so you end up with kind of, a mismatch in values and value offered to the employees. Fourth, this is a big one. Annual surveys are typically not reflective of the current state of play. And so a lot of companies that we work with, especially in the mid-market and enterprise space, do an employee engagement survey once a year. As we know, like the world, companies, the environment are changing so quickly that a moment in time, it's often outdated by the time you need to take action. And then finally, this was probably, frankly, my biggest learning over the past several years, is the criticality of managers in employee experience. And the old adage, the expression that you'll hear me repeat, is that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And so we know how important the manager is in both empowering, enabling employees, but also keeping them at the company. And what we're also seeing is that there is a lack of systemic support and enablement and development for people managers beyond the technical skills that got them there. And so what is required to be a great people manager is not typically what's required of someone to be a great IC. And that gap in skills and experience leaves people feeling quite overwhelmed and unable to do the best for their team. And so what does this mean? If this is what isn't working, what is required, what is working? What we're seeing from employees, and the study that we published with the BBC and the 30% Club last year holds true. Employees want inclusion, they want growth, they want transparency. They don't want posters, they don't want candy, they don't want foosball. They want to feel like they can see a future. They want to feel like they're supported by their team and their manager. And they want to feel like there's a path forward for their success. Okay, so what happens when culture fails? You'll hear me say this, again, time and again. It is an AI world at the moment. And what I've felt and what I believe is that information and strategy, and I say this as a former McKinsey strategy consultant, those are becoming commodities. So the right answer can typically, if you know how to prompt engineer, that can be discovered quite quickly. The information can be accessed easier than ever. So in an age where strategy and information are commodities, all you have is culture. All you have is execution. So the stakes are high. They're higher than ever right now. And when inclusion, development, and transparency are missing, people either leave overtly, explicitly, or they quiet quit. So you see either churn writ large, or you see burnout, you see disengagement, you see demotivation. This is a huge cost center for businesses, whether it's tracked because they've left or whether it's reflected in productivity. Again, it's more important than ever for companies to really, really focus on culture. we like to always add, some numeric figures to the insights and the trends that we're seeing. So what is the cost of turnover? We're seeing from an HR perspective, I do a lot of work with CEOs and CFOs. The line item that they're typically most concerned with is their people. Not only because, leaders, I think intuitively recognize that is the power behind most people's business, but that also is the line item that has the biggest impact at a board meeting. And so what does that look like? We find that, and a lot of data supports this, an entry-level employee, if they leave, it typically costs you between 30 to 50% of their annual salary to replace them. So that's, business disruptions, that's recruiting costs if you have them, internal talent, recruitment teams, and then of course the cost of onboarding a new person. Those costs go up meaningfully as more senior employees leave. So about, a highly specialized person or a senior executive, you're looking at 4 times their annual salary to replace that person. And absolutely, there are certain people and roles that it's almost immeasurable. You might have an incredible AI engineer, the only person on the team that has all of the background on, whatever platform or product you've developed. You might have a salesperson who, brings in 50% of your business. You might have a strategy person who holds your closest partnerships. And so a lot of, these are generic values, but I think we all can think of one person we work with who we would really hate to lose. And so what does that mean for us at Diversio? We are laser focused on helping companies become the best versions of themselves, the best versions of their culture, so that people want to stay. And we believe it's not just about the money. And this is an insight and a learning that we've experienced over the past 7 years, but we've really brought it to the fore over the past 12 months as we look back across 7 years of data, as I mentioned, across many companies, many countries, to try to understand what is it, if it's not foosball and it's not, a one-time raise, what is it that's going to keep employees? And spoiler alert, what we've discovered, there is no silver bullet. And what is required, similar to DEI, is a really systemic, data-driven, personalized approach to your people, to use their motivations to help managers understand why they might not be performing at their best, and implement micro interventions to improve their performance, improve their motivation, improve their retention. But before we get into that, let's look at some of the data. So again, I think there's a lot of conventional wisdom out there about churn and turnover, but really what are the drivers? And so we, did an academic scan, combined it with our own research, and we found there's six main things or main reasons that a person is likely to leave their company. First one is career growth. So you don't see a future, you don't see a promotion coming up, you don't know really what you're doing at your company or where it could take you. Second, purpose, mission, fit, particularly with younger generations. So think Gen Z, think millennials. We're seeing the surveys are quite clear. They want to work at a company where they align with their values. They want to feel like they're getting up every day, spending 35% of their time working on a cause or working on a product that aligns with, what they want to achieve in the world. Third, I think absolutely we see this differently across different demographics, but men, women, caregivers, older employees, younger employees, everybody is saying that they want more flexibility. That work-life integration, the ability to pick up their kids from school, the ability to take off if they have a sick parent, if they need to finish their work when they get home. Again, younger generations absolutely are saying I want more flexibility, but we're seeing that creep up as well. Fourth reason, toxic culture. We deal with this all the time at at Diversio. Again, people leave managers, not companies. And if there's a lack of inclusion, a lack of motivation, a lack of recognition, and a feeling of, there's no psychological safety here, that's a big red flag. And one of the quickest reasons somebody might leave a company, they can't do it anymore. Building on that, poor management, again, I'll come back to this. Ultimately, and you can imagine why, the person that you report to and who influences your development plan and also dictates your day-to-day work life, if you don't get along with them, if you don't feel supported by them, that's a quick way to make you feel, disengaged and ultimately look for a better fit. And then finally, not the biggest driver, although it's treated this way, compensation. And so what we find is that as a driver, it's more of a baseline must-have rather than like a key factor in someone's decision to leave. But if somebody is aggressively overpaid, especially if their life circumstances require more pay, that absolutely can be a driver. Okay, so on the flip side of that, what drives retention? So these are related but not identical kind of counterpoints to what drives churn. But what keeps someone at a company? Number one, again, if they see growth and they feel development. So they see a path forward, they feel like they're learning, they feel like they're making progress towards some sort of goal. Building on that, and this one I think is really underestimated by, it feels fluffy, but it's a real meaningful factor. A lot of employees, they want that recognition, they want that motivation. So they want to be told that they're doing a good job if they stay up late. They want to be recognized publicly by their peers and maybe by the higher ups if they do a great job on a project. Flexibility and work-life integration, again, especially with the younger generations, but absolutely perseveres throughout midlife and beyond. People want to feel like they have scheduling flexibility so that they can balance their work with their home life. Inclusive culture, again, several studies that we put together, including with the University of Waterloo, have demonstrated that if people feel included, they feel loyal. They feel like they want to stay. And so creating that culture of, you feel like your opinion is valued by your team, you feel like people are invested in you, that is a huge factor in why people will stay loyal to their company. Flip side of poor management is great management. So if they feel that it's twofold, I think this is important. It's not just that your manager likes you and you feel comfortable with them. It's, are they pushing you? Are they supporting you? Are they contributing to that development plan? Are they blocking and tackling for you if you have too much on your plate? Are they having really, nuanced and sophisticated discussions with you about things like compensation, about risk factors to the business and your career? So that high quality manager is a really important factor for retention. And then finally, we call it a retention hygiene factor. You've got to have competitive and transparent pay. So if you're really underpaying someone, it likely will be a matter of time before they get another offer. And similarly, if someone doesn't see what their future compensation could look like, if there's a lack of transparency, that could be another reason that they leave. Broken record here for me again, the role of managers. So again, huge insight for us over the years. And we, if anyone is familiar with Diversio, our original platform, we collect free text feedback, which is open-ended from employees. And we have many hundreds of thousands of data points at this point. And managers and their role comes up more than anything else. So when somebody tells us, I feel included, I feel motivated, I'm excited to come to work, I'm over-delivering, I'm staying up late, I'm getting up early, typically, more often than not, they're saying, I really believe in my manager, I really believe in my role within our team. So my direct kind of sphere of influence, I feel very positive about that. Equally, when people tell us I'm not happy, I'm not motivated, often what they point to is I don't believe in my manager, I don't believe that they believe in me. And so the studies and the academic research to support this, people don't leave companies, they leave managers, absolutely has been validated and reinforced by the free text feedback that we've gotten over the past several years. So why is that? Some of the factors we spoke about previously, motivation, inclusion, training, and development. These four things directly affected and really driven by someone's manager. So they're influencing your autonomy to help you feel motivated and ownership, clarity, sense of purpose. They are the ones that will create that psychological safety, who will intervene if it doesn't exist, who will promote that sense of belonging. Training, of course, your manager typically oversees your development plan, sees what skills you need to build to get to the next role. And finally, that kind of sponsorship component, role assignments, stretch assignments, your manager typically will influence how quickly you develop. So this leads me to what we have developed at Diversio as what we're trying to do is create signal from the noise. So it's a lot of factors, a lot of information. Humans are messy, we're complicated. As an HR leader, as an executive, as a people manager, what can you think about in a more simplified manner as call it boxes you need to check to create a really high quality environment for your team members. And as I mentioned earlier, what we've seen happen in a lot of companies is that culture is managed in one respect, and then learning and development is managed in another. And so they're siloed. And what we have observed is that a really great employee experience includes both. And so those factors need to be thought about in combination. If you have great culture, but you have no learning and development, what you have is somebody who's excited and feels like they belong, but they're not empowered. They're not enabled to really over-deliver. Likewise, if you have a great learning and development program, but you have terrible culture, that person might have all the skills that they need, but they don't feel empowered to apply them. They can't take risks, they can't innovate, and so that training becomes stalled out. So the 4 metrics that matter to our culture, to our development: focus on motivation, focus on inclusion in the culture space, focus on training, focus on access to opportunity in the development space. Again, hygiene factor underlying all of this, and this really is the checkbox, is there competitive and transparent pay? And our belief, and what's been supported by our experience, if you can nail those 5 things, you have got a highly performing culture. On the flip side, again, what a lot of organizations do, and frankly, including us at the beginning, is use tools that are either too slow, too late, or don't contribute effectively to the holistic employee experience. So employee engagement surveys, again, if you do it once a year and you rely on that data for the next 12 months, it's going to be outdated at some point. Exit interviews, of course, are post hoc indicators. And so you're hearing why somebody left, not why they might leave. It's a little bit too late. And training budgets, again, if those are deployed in isolation from things like culture, it's money thrown against the wind. It's not going to guarantee performance or motivation. And so our learning is that firms really need a proactive systems-based approach, something that ideally brings in data from multiple sources to give you more of a real-time view, not at just the aggregate level, but also at the individual and team level. What are the potential demotivators? What are the potential challenges to culture? And most important, everybody's busy and everybody's overloaded with data. What is the one thing, the 2 or 3 things that a manager could do today, an employee could do today to improve that experience? And so a lot of the questions we get is, okay, we've got these 4 metrics and 2 of them relate to culture, 2 of them relate to learning and development. How do we get that data? And companies are at different stages of their journey. And so what we have is a little bit of a cheat sheet here for if you're starting today and you want to think about culture more holistically, what data could you pull in your role in, call it HR, people management, to start to understand how you're performing? So if you're at the start of your journey, maybe you don't have, a data team or a IT team that can support you, or, maybe procurement's going to take forever. Beginner data for motivation, pulse surveys. So, it could be one pulse survey on a weekly basis. How motivated are you today? Track that over time. See, obviously, if there's any red flags, act on it quickly. Similarly, also can be deployed in a pulse survey. Is your opinion valued by your team? Of all the questions we ask about DEI and inclusion specifically, that is the one that is most predictive of if somebody feels included and feels like they belong. Training, you can of course track training completion and NPS. So have they done the training and did they like it? Very simple. And access to opportunity, development plans are a simple way to look at it. So best practice is that every employee should have some sort of formal or written down or well understood development plan. What is their next role potentially, and how could they get there? And then on the flip side, once companies are a bit more advanced, and we'll walk you through one way to do this, at least how we do it now here with Optimo. There's a lot that can be done now with real-time data. So think through sentiment analysis on team communication. So we have a plugin for Slack, for example, that can tell you what is the sentiment of the conversations. How does that differ by employee? Is anybody, speaking in a way that seems especially motivated, especially excited? Is anybody working after hours? That sort of thing. A lot can be gleaned from those real-time communications tools. Inclusion, again, a lot of you I think are probably quite familiar with what we do here. So looking at engagement data by demographic, different types of people, if they're experiencing the workplace differently, require specific interventions. Training, of course, is not just have they done it, did they like it, did they apply their learning? So that can be, again, tracked on an ongoing basis. Maybe it's 30, 60, 90-day check-ins. And then finally, stretch opportunities are a really good indicator who's getting them, who's completing them in terms of access to opportunity. So this is what we call the retain great people formula. If you build a great culture and you ensure ongoing development, you will reduce turnover. You will become a great place to work, somewhere that people want to stay, somewhere where people feel like they can be innovative and creative and over-deliver. So this brings me to, very simply, our performance culture framework. For those of you who are kind of math-oriented, framework-oriented, we think of it as retention equals culture multiplied by development, where culture equals inclusion multiplied by motivation, and development equals training multiplied by opportunity. So those are the metrics we just went over. Again, if you think in kind of a mathy sort of way, it's one way to kind of keep your thoughts in line in terms of managing a great team.
Amazing, Laura. Grab some water.
Thank you.
Incredible. We've had some awesome questions come through. We've answered a couple live. Question 2, interesting data. Thanks for sharing. Quick question. Being a mid-manager, we ourselves are overwhelmed at times. We all are. What early signs should I look for if I think my team is quitting? Now, Sam Bonin, this is your moment. Sam is going to answer that question and many more by walking you through the new Optimo demo. And we'll address the other 2 questions afterwards. And obviously, any more questions from the demo, please put them in the chat. And thanks everybody for engaging so much today.
Thank you, Daniel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much, Laura. What I will do now is I will share screen. As I mentioned, this is a live demo, so we will be showing you the new Optimo platform. Some of you who are familiar with our Diversio platform, this is a similar look and feel, but it is fundamentally different across a couple of angles. I'm here on the authentication page. As we pointed out, there are 3 main user types that we're looking to support with this platform, that being the HR professionals, which I presume is the majority of the folks on this call, the managers, as we've spoken about many, many times throughout this presentation, and then finally the employee. Just because the question came up just now, we'll actually look at the manager first and foremost, because they act kind of as the center of gravity and the culture carriers of their specific organization day to day. So I'm going to just bypass authentication, and I'm going to land on my manager dashboard. So for this example, I'm actually Aaron here. I can see first and foremost the most important parts of my team. I have my side nav bar here, which will be a deep dive into everything specific. But for now, we'll just take a look at our overall dashboard. So I'm Aaron. I'm a mid-level manager managing a team of multiple individuals. And I need to know the sentiment, how my team is doing, and most importantly, be able to actually act in real time. We know that there's a lot of tools out there that can do the data side of things, but there's not really a lot of tools that can actually do something about it. So they surface the insight and then they kind of leave you to yourself to be able to do something about it and see an actual measurable progress. But in specific here, we'll take a look and we'll notice that I actually have 7 people currently that have been identified by our Optimo backend system as at risk for churn. We also have a few individuals who are on the lookout for burnout. We've also, the system in concert with the manager has identified employees that are high potential or high performing. This will come very important later in the demo. I'll take a look here and look at my high priority alerts. So this allows me to go see my team specifically. So this is my team directory. We can see here that I have 6 individuals who are my subordinates. I'll take a look at Alex Chen here in particular. So Alex is my senior software engineer. The system has identified him as a high-level risk employee. Now, the way that the system actually does such a thing is that we connect into a bunch of different data sources to be able to actually get the data in real time. So this is not your annual engagement survey where the data is so far ago that it would be difficult to act. This is actually looking in real time on platforms like Slack, Teams, and many more to be able to identify the risk level. So we can see here that Alex is identified as a high potential person, and they do not have a development plan. So let's go take a look at the actions that we can take with Alex. So looking into Alex's profile here, we can actually see directly what his primary motivators are. This is something that some people don't necessarily always feel comfortable talking about, but as we'll come to find out with the employee facing side, we'll be able to dive in and figure out who actually is Alex and how are we able to best support them. We have here in the top right a calculation at what the actual attrition cost will actually be if Alex were to leave. Now, of course, this is one global number, but it's important to remember that if Alex is a high potential and a culture carrier within their team, losing Alex would actually have a ripple impact across the entire business. And so that's also highlighted here. We can see that our Smart Optimo engine has actually recommended 3 actions. And this is really where the difference lies. We want to be able to empower managers in real time to take actions and not significantly add to their workload. So because we've identified here that Alex enjoys recognition and visibility, the system has recommended that we send him a public kudos. Now, this is really as simple as just taking the action, and it will send a Slack or Teams message or email, be it public or private, directly to that employee. And there's a bunch of studies that show that actually highlighting this achievement and doing public kudos actually has a massive impact. Personally, I also benefit significantly from recognition and visibility, as Laura would know. And so this is just one of the actions. Also, we can see that Alex doesn't have a development plan, but he is a high potential employee. So the system has also recommended to assign him a mentor. And so this backend engine, Optimo, would be able to kind of look through the entire organization, figure out the skills profile and experience profile of different employees within the organization, and match and suggest a mentor. Now, when we have 400, 500, 600 people orgs, it can be quite difficult as HR to remember every single individual and where their skill sets and experience lies. But this platform aggregates all those data sources and takes a lot of the decision-making and busy work out of the equation for everyone. I'll go backwards now for the manager side of things, and we will notice that I have my quick actions. Just to stay on a little bit more on the time here, I'll actually switch over to the employee now. So this was the manager view. I'll now switch to the employee, which is slightly different. And so this, we can think of this largely as visibility into what the employee's career trajectory and their sentiment around the organization. So here in this case, I'm actually Alex now, I'm no longer Aaron. I have the opportunity to update what actually matters to me. And it just so happens that Alex and I share the exact same things. So I'm going to go here and update my preferences. You'll notice here that we have Alex's development progress. And so this would have been set by the system in concert with the manager and the higher ups in the organization to figure out, okay, Alex is a high potential employee. What do they need to do to be able to ascend to that next level? It's clear here as I look down that my manager has actually enrolled me into the advanced analytics course. So if Alex were to take this course, again, we can offer this through the platform directly. These are the certain steps that they would need to be able to take to advance in their career. We like to think of it as a two-way street, in that without some of these systems in place at an organization of, let's say, 200 to 1,000 employees, it's really difficult to have visibility because oftentimes these things are hidden behind personal Excel spreadsheets. But actually giving a platform where all of this information is centralized and it gives the opportunity for transparency. We'll look over here to the recent recognition. And I think this kind of talks a little bit about humans' general preference to think about the negatives in general, but we often get quite a bit of positive reinforcement, or we actually do get investment from leadership, from managers into the employee, but it's often in one ear and out the other. So this platform is actually echoing back to Alex all the positive reinforcement that Aaron, or in this case, Sarah, has provided to them, as well as like I mentioned, the actions that the manager has actually done to be able to support that particular employee. Also, we like to think about that two-way street of communication and transparency. And so the platform actually assists in ensuring that these milestones, these one-on-ones, these annual performance reviews are actually getting done. So in this particular case, you can see that the system has notified that you do have that one-on-one with your manager, and it's booked today at Friday at 3 p.m. to ensure that there's actually accountability within the system directly. I'll now finally turn to HR. And so this is probably one of the coolest things that I believe the platform can offer companies. But as an HR user here, we looked at the manager who looks at the scope of their particular employees. We look at the employee and their career and development pathway within the organization. But as HR business professionals, as VP of people and CHROs within organization, you need a quantifiable way to be able to roll up all these important metrics and communicate that and advocate for your people programs within an organization. So we can think of this dashboard here as kind of a high-level bird's eye view of every single team that's occurring within the organization. I can see here in total how many people are at risk for churn. So these are my really important metrics to kind of check in on a daily or weekly basis to see, okay, what is the health of my organization this week versus last week. Finally, we get this rolled up attrition cost. So what is actually the risk? And the hope is we could be able to bridge the gap between the language of the CEO and the CFO in quantifiable terms, and then people programs for the CHRO, effectively be able to enhance that communication to be able to make better decisions across the entire organization. So as I come down here, we will notice that managers care about their particular employees and HR cares about everyone. But in particular, it's quite difficult to reach every single person in the organization, but wouldn't it be a great way to actually see your managers in specific? So here we can see that Aaron Rodriguez on the air engineering team is actually one of our top performing managers, and is probably an example of that we should echo out to the other teams. Whereas Lisa here has been flagged as needing support. So we want to create a platform that doesn't pinpoint, low performers, but in general, identify people that do actually need support. And so here we can see that Lisa has 3 high potentials flags, but she hasn't taken any actions. And so this would allow HR early insight and early opportunity to intervene and provide with Lisa with the support that they may actually need. Finally, as we were talking about with the actions for the manager, we have actions for the HR. So these would be something like org level actions. And so when we roll up all the insights from the managers on each specific team, we can see that, look, everyone is having a really hard time with the work policy and the work from home policy. So the system has suggested that we review the flexible and remote work policy. Or for example, we believe that, there's a lack of morale within the company, and we suggest that we actually, as HR people, talk about purpose and mission within our specific company. So these are just examples of things that the HR can do. As I turn to the side nav bar, you will have the ability to see everyone in particular within the organization. You'll also, and I think that this is a fantastic feature, be able to actually export these reports whenever you want and through whatever modality you want, to be able to actually, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before that monthly or quarterly board meeting, go in there, produce a report, and being able to speak the language of everyone else in the organization. So that's kind of a high level snapshot overview of the platform. We would like to continue to work with our clients directly and with our pilot clients to be able to build a platform that's actually intended to be great for the users. We don't want to add a significant workload to any particular person, because we know how stretched thin the managers are in general, as well as HR. So you can think of this platform as something that you can interface at the cadence that you want, and we're looking to come and meet you instead of having the employees and the managers and the HR professionals come and meet the platform. So we have integrations with Slack, we have integrations with Teams that would allow you to deploy a pulse survey with a single click of a button, have everything automated. We'd have a kudos channel, so you could send the kudos privately or publicly with whatever medium you so wish, as well as I mentioned, being able to download the reports. And we'll be continuing to add features on a weekly and on a monthly basis to be able to support our HR people, our managers, and our employees. I think that finishes off. I noticed that there's polls going out and there's questions. So I'll likely turn it back to Dan and Laura. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to show you this today.
That was amazing. Thank you, Sam. I loved what you finished with. meeting people where they are. So not adding more channels, more technology, more complexity to their everyday with Teams, with Slack, with obviously Gmail as well. One quick question, if I may. Can this be customized with the performance development plan we already have in place?
That's a great question. So yeah, we've actually been talking to a bunch of HR professionals, managers, and we actually do really want to live and breathe that. And so a great example of this with the advances of AI, we will be able to actually integrate with a lot of the platforms. And for platforms that we may not be able to integrate from day one with, we will have these import wizards, which is, I'll kind of take it in a specific context. We was talking to Lisa, which is our head of sales, and she said, hey, I actually keep an Excel on my personal drive where I actually put down all the AEs, comments, feedback and stuff like that. And on a regular basis, I'm actually updating that and then having the conversations. Is this platform capable of taking in that data and putting it up somewhere here that is public? And the answer is absolutely. So we'll be able to actually just take the data as you currently have it and being able to parse it and put it in the platform. We're kind of at this new wave of technology now where we don't need to be so constricted and have everything be so formatted. I know everyone here has had the struggles with saying, well, the column names aren't perfect and the system is not, liking it. But now with the technology that we have, we'll be able to basically take in any sort of data and be able to map it into the language that Optimo platform understands.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam. So the results are in from the poll question. What's the biggest challenge you're facing when it comes to culture and retention today? Burnout and disengagement, 57%, closely followed by manager inconsistency, 43%, unclear ownership of culture, who's responsible, 36%, and then, as Sam has demonstrated, a lack of real-time data or visibility, and then followed by leadership buy-in. So thank you all so much for getting involved in that. Laura, can I pose a question to you?
Absolutely.
We're a 400-person organization and just hired our first head of people and culture. How do you even start building a culture measurement baseline? You kind of answered it, but I thought we could answer it directly.
Yeah, listen, I think the raison d'etre of Optimo is to help companies exactly in that sweet spot build that cultural baseline. And so I'd say like our platform is designed very much to do that. And so what it does is it intakes HRIS data. So if you're on ADP or Workday, all of the information about who's working where, what their role is, their join date, et cetera. Combine that with employee engagement data if you have it. So maybe use CultureAmp, maybe use Peakon. If you don't, we have that capability internally. So Optimo will deploy a pulse survey, very quick. We have very high response rates. And then basically weave it all together. So you get that one centralized view of what culture looks like at your organization. If you are not an Optimo user, which we hope everybody will be at some point, typically the quickest way to do it is with some manual integration of, again, Workday data or ADP data. So who is in the organization, extract that, combine that with employee engagement data to understand how they're feeling at the company, and overlay that with promotion rates. So what does their development plan look like? So it is, again, the reason for building a platform is it can be messy, it can be quite tricky to overlay those data sets, but it is possible. We have seen it.
Amazing, thank you. And then the final question we've got just relates to the transparent pay. What does it mean in this case? Posting salary ranges, publishing the full compensation, a sort of radical transparency model, and sharing knowledge on where people are compared to their peers.
So I will give you the academic answer, and then I'll give you the realistic answer. I think the academics would say full transparency. So salary bands so that people understand what they can expect to make at certain, levels of seniority, so, after a specific promotion. I will say most companies, especially mid-market, they're not comfortable and probably don't have enough certainty to be able to fully publish those pay scales, or maybe they change quickly and it just doesn't match business reality. And so typically what that means by transparent pay is that people should understand what roughly they are being paid right now relative to market. And I think it has to be assumed that people have access to that data now. So if you are aware that someone's well under market rate, they are probably now, again, with ChatGPT and Gemini, aware that they're under market rate. And so transparency around how that figure was set. So it might be you compare and you benchmark your pay scale every year. You might create a total compensation package that includes maybe stock options. And so transparency around how that person is compensated, how the company came to that figure, and why typically is a good place to start. And then some level of transparency and clarity around as the employee moves up in the organization, how will their compensation change? So it could be, you know, a general rule of thumb that maybe a bump comes with a 5% pay raise, or a certain role, you know, again, is pegged to market value. So the idea here is that you need to be able to have a conversation with an employee where you can defend what they're being paid and explain where that number has come from.
Amazing. Thank you. Didn't you used to be a lawyer, Laura? That was a sort of legal answer as well, wasn't
A little bit, yeah. I sometimes forget, but I was indeed a lawyer.
it? Amazing. That's we've run out of time, unfortunately, but thank you everyone for being here today. As you can see, scan the QR code for your complimentary culture health assessment. You can also learn more on the new optimoteams.com website. Book a demo with me, with Laura, any one of the team, and we'll be sharing the presentation with you at some point tomorrow. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Sam, so much again, and Laura, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Bye.